a lot of what I wrote about in this mastermind was how I've reached these points of just sheer confusion about how I functioned as a person up until now, especially in the mornings, waking up just completely unsure how I functioned the day before, such that I don't know what I'm going to do today to get even the same results. Yeah, stress is definitely the biggest affector in my life. So anything that affects that is worth considering, I think.
ADHD Rewired, episode 335. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. It's been a while since we've had a mastermind session, and we are here with our admin from ARC20. Our admin, we spell with 2 Ds. I'll let you think about that for a moment. And ARC20, ADHD Rewired Coaching, which is ARC. Some people aren't. They're like, what's this ARC thing I hear people talking about? So we have Jessica. Hello, Jessica. Saying hello works better than nodding on podcasts, typically.
Hi, Eric.
And we have Natalie.
Howdy.
And we have Erica.
Hello.
And in the hot seat today, we have Blake.
Hello.
All right. So, Blake, I'm just going to ask for you to kind of dive right in. And I just want to share for our listeners who might be new, what we do. One of the things that we do in our coaching groups is each person has basically half an hour to bring an issue to the group, and everyone is going to help them with the group. We also ask our members to fill out this whole form, this packet that basically gives us a background of that. Since you as a listener don't have that piece of paper in hand, we do. I'm going to let Blake kind of give us an overview of what he'd put in his mastermind worksheet, as all of us are going to be trying to help Blake with an issue that I think a lot of us can relate to, an issue that, well, Blake is just referring to his morning impotence. So Blake, with that, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Eric. Yes, I would have to say that my mastermind is heavily focused on this hope of you all being able to contribute to breaking the cycle that perpetuates my morning impotence. It is, as I've heard some people call ADHD. I can't actually say it myself. Jeez, I feel weird. But
the erectile dysfunction of psychology because you can't consistently get it up.
That thing. I think I just forgot. Maybe I just wanted you to say it. I'm not sure. But I think that the overview of this is probably best explained as the issue that I want to do, and kind of the hopes that I have in trying to bring it with you guys and talk about it, as well as general feelings and kind of what I've tried to do so far. And then hopefully we can talk about the benefits, what I'm actually willing to do and not willing to do. I'm pretty much willing to do a lot of things, but the reason why is I'm struggling a lot in the mornings to just get myself going to start my day. It's honestly 2-3 hours before I'm alert enough or motivated enough to do anything. It's clear that I'll start work because I have a meeting and I'll show up. However, I don't like that. I want more out of my mornings. I want more out of my day. It's not something that really sets me up for success. And it's often something that kind of drags me down. whenever my schedule flip-flops around, when new things are introduced to it, we end the season of ARC and everything is up in upheaval. This sort of thing just tanks my day. I'll spend the whole day unproductive. And I mean, I think that I don't have to explain much about why that sucks, but honestly, there's a lot of things that I care about, that I really want to put my time into. I really see myself having the opportunity to support my family and friends, to be a refuge to people, to continue to host people in our home, as well as to bring justice to the communities around me. There's a lot of things that I hope to do, and they seem pretty lofty and ambitious for someone who can't get it up in the morning and get himself to work. So I think probably the only other thing I would summarize is sort of what it's looked like. Usually I wake up and immediately get food, coffee, meds into my body, and then play video games or something. Most of the time video games, but something to do that is easy to do, just to be doing something at all instead of just laying there staring at the ceiling. And this is mostly on the couch, just the main floor of my house. And sometimes I wake up way too early because I'm anxious, and this starts at like 4:30 and doesn't really kick into full gear until 8 a.m. So usually it can be as long as that, as long as almost 4 hours of just spinning up my, I don't really know what resources I actually have. Spinning up my motivation doesn't seem to be there, but at least spinning up my urgency and anxiety, that's definitely there.
Okay. I know that I have a couple questions for clarification. I don't know if everyone else does as well. If you do, just kind of unmute yourself and jump in. Has this always been a pattern though? As long as you can remember?
I believe so. The mornings have always been significant in defining the relative pace of my day.
Okay.
Even when I was a kid.
And what about bedtime? Are you, what time are you going to bed?
I walk upstairs to start the activity of bedtime at 9:30 almost every night. That's been something I've focused really hard on doing, but it still varies.
Now, what time are you turning the lights off?
My sleep app says that I fall asleep at like 10:30-ish.
Okay. All right.
Lights off usually like 10:30-ish, but so maybe like 11. I don't know. I definitely have it set so that by 6 a.m. I'm usually up and have had 7 and a half to 8 hours of sleep.
Any alcohol or marijuana use before bed?
No marijuana use. And no CBD. I'm on too many meds. The days that I have had drinks on the weekends, there's definitely a tipping point where one drink is kind of, I can't really tell if it affects anything or not, but 2 to 3 is definitely like, it might mess me up for the next day as far as being able to regulate my feelings.
Are you using Sleep Cycle? Yep.
No, I am using Sleep for Android. Okay.
I don't know if this does this, but on Sleep Cycle, they have a function called Notes, and you can create data points. So on mine, I have one where I actually says like drink alcohol ? And so and it sets it right before I set the alarm. So like as I'm setting the alarm, before it actually starts the Sleep Cycle mode, it asks you these questions, right? And so we can see over time the things that correlate with your sleep. You know, things like whether I meditated, whether I journaled, whether I exercised, whether I spent too much time in the pantry in the evening, gorging on carbohydrates. Okay. Have you ever been tested for a sleep study?
No, I have not. I do have some family history about sleep, but not any sleep related studies for myself.
All right. So when I'm hearing this, I would say if you did nothing else from this and get a sleep study, that would be like the next course of action.
Oh, that's true. I think the last time we talked, I was suffering from Adderall-induced insomnia. So sleep study was not super on my mind. But yeah, I've actually like switched over to Concerta, and that's actually gone away. So
anybody with ADHD, especially with morning impotence, absolutely should get a sleep study to rule out sleep apnea or any other sleep disturbance, because those things are treatable. Jessica.
Yeah. So along the same lines of questioning, I'm glad you went there, Eric, because that's exactly where I was going. So to just expand on your bedtime routine, you say that you're heading upstairs at about 9:30. So what are you doing in that time? Like, what is your actual routine before bed?
yes. So at the simplest form, it is I go upstairs, I take my meds, I brush my teeth. That takes all of 10 minutes. And then I'm usually just in bed waiting for my wife to finish getting ready. And many things have occupied that space. Sometimes I read. Sometimes that's the one. For a while, that was when I was trying to fit in responding to messages from people on different apps. And often it's just a random period of time that could be conversation or just abuse of social media.
Okay. Have you thought about trying to put your phone to bed at the same time that you start your nighttime routine and maybe doing some PM meditation instead?
I like the idea of PM meditation.
I like the idea of having a bed for your phone.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like when you said that, Jessica, I was just like, I just picture this cute little bed that you just kind of tuck in. It's like, good night, phone.
Seriously, you can actually tuck your phone in. I have a friend who does that. She actually does tuck her phone in. It's very cute. So yeah, Blake, so circling back around to this, and there's a couple other ideas. One, I can tell you that I've struggled with this a bit myself, particularly the waking up. And the sleep studies, there's definitely a great idea. But another thing that most people don't think about that has actually impacted me is actually blood sugar. So what's fascinating is if you're waking up at 3:30, 4:30 this time, what could be happening is you could actually be having reactive hypoglycemia, and it feels like a panic attack. So I'm wondering, when are you feeling, or when are you eating dinner, and what is that dinner made out of?
So during the weekdays, let's see, I'll give examples because it's highly variable. During the weekdays, my wife and I will cook like a protein and a vegetable, chicken or fish and asparagus, Brussels sprouts, something like that. And we'll have that around 7:30, and that will kind of cap the night. There's of course many times when like there's a dessert or snack between then and bed, especially like leading into the weekends. And then when that is not the case, when that routine isn't going on, it's usually takeout, like probably exactly what you're talking about, like high carbohydrate focused foods.
Okay.
And that would be probably the same time, if not later.
Okay. So your timing seems pretty good. I would say, see if you can start logging, like if you keep a notebook by your bed or something like that, see if you can start logging dinner and when you're waking up with this anxiety, and see if you can find a pattern. You can also go get your blood sugar levels tested, but I can tell you it did not show up for me. And I spent probably a good 6+ years thinking I was having terrible panic attacks and actually being diagnosed with anxiety when actually I had hypoglycemia. And luckily my current partner had a former roommate that was diabetic. So he recognized it in me. I told him, I'm sorry, I'm having a panic attack one time. I have to pull over. I was freaking out and frustrated. And he actually gave me some honey ham to eat. And within like 5 minutes, my quote unquote panic attack disappeared. It's just a thought.
No, that's definitely worth considering, especially since I've started to establish little bits of routine. I think I could handle tracking more of like the type of dinner that I have and if I've woken up in that night, especially since I use the sleep app. I guess I could take notes in that.
There you go. And a weird quick tip, if that does wind up being it, just a small tablespoon of honey, which sounds totally counterintuitive, but a tiny tablespoon of honey before you go to bed can actually help stabilize your blood sugar through the night and prevent that awakening. So
I actually talked to a doctor once because I was telling him about my graham cracker habit. And I was telling him I was trying to cut that out before bed. And he's like, maybe you actually need that before bed. So I was like, oh, doctor's orders. All right. I'm keeping it up. So yeah, it's good to experiment. Cause I know when I wake up in the morning and if I didn't eat something right before bed, like I don't feel good. All right, Erica.
It's true.
Yeah. So like, I just want to make sure I've got this in my mind. So how many times a week are you waking up early in that sort of state where you're laying there, you don't feel like getting up, you don't have any motivation, but you can't go back to sleep because now the anxiety is there. So how many times a week is that actually happening, do you think?
I can usually correlate it with deadlines at work and changes in routine. And I've seen that be consistent through the last few months. So it'll be a couple of nights leading into the week where I have a deadline. And my work kind of does chunks of work in periods of 2 weeks. So a few times a month. And then also I was expecting it when ARC was going to end. I was like, I'm going to have all these open blocks with nothing planned, and I don't know what that's going to do to me. And over the weekend, it was definitely just like weird, trying to go to sleep Sunday night, knowing that Monday I didn't have anything actually due, but I'm so used to having a whole bunch of stuff that I need to prepare for ARC. I actually had a lot of weird dreams. And Monday was actually the night this week that I woke up at like 4:30.
So sometimes is this correct? That makes sense. Sometimes you're waking up at 4 and then the anxiety kicks in, but other times you're getting your full amount of sleep, but you're still dragging. Is that correct?
Yes.
Like,
it's
okay.
Really
so sometimes it's like so extreme. You're just like, it's really bad. But then sometimes it's just sort of, you're just dragging, even if you've gotten the 8 hours, you just can't seem to get motivated. It's not happening. Okay.
Sometimes I even have to have a nap at 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll rack up like 10 hours in a day of registered sleep.
You say a nap at 4 or 5 p.m.?
Yes.
That is probably too late for a nap, my friend. Because you need, what's the word? Sleep pressure or sleep, it's this a force that builds up that it's at its lowest upon waking up, typically, right? And then as you go throughout the day, it builds and builds and builds until you have that feeling like you're falling asleep, right? A nap at like 4 or 5, you'd be lucky to fall asleep by like midnight, like if you're lucky, right? So like, They suggest that you should have at least, at very least 8 hours in between a short nap, right? And your actual bedtime. And when I say short nap, I mean like half an hour. Like,
quick note.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, it's actually called adenosine, and caffeine actually blocks the adenosine receptors in your brain. That's what builds up sleep pressure.
Sleep pressure.
So Eric's 100% correct. That sleep pressure is really important. So if you are taking naps later, that could also be what's waking you up. Good note.
Oh, okay. So this is actually an interesting segue because I didn't actually consider it when writing this mastermind because my caffeine habits have changed a lot over the last several months. But up until this week have been increasing. But this problem was going on before. However, I also have been taking for almost a year now a cortisol sort of supplemental health thing that was recommended to me by my psychiatrist to promote like better stress health. And one of the things that I found really fascinating about the Spark books on exercise was how it talked about too much cortisol can affect your hippocampus and memory. And a lot of what I wrote about in this mastermind was how I've reached these points of just sheer confusion about how I functioned as a person up until now, especially in the mornings, waking up just completely unsure how I functioned the day before, such that I don't know what I'm going to do today to get even the same results. Yeah, stress is definitely the biggest affector in my life. So anything that affects that is worth considering, I think. Do you guys have any opinions, thoughts?
All I know is, speaking about stress, the fact that my phone just rang gave me stress. And then I'm going to just use this as a segue so you can actually tell me what you just said, because my brain was thinking about the fact that my phone just rang. So my apologies, but we will be right back. Support for ADHD reWired comes from the ADHD reWired coaching community, which includes our coaching and accountability groups and our alumni membership community.
I definitely would describe the group as a mirror of myself reflected back at me so many times that I can no longer deny who I am.
I decided to join the group because early this year, I decided to take my ADHD more seriously. And rather than sort of pushing away the things that I didn't like about the impact it had on me, I felt like I should learn more structure about how to deal with it and work through those things.
The ongoing community was a big part of the reason I wanted to sign up, because I didn't want something temporary. I wanted something that supports me for longer than that. I still feel like I'm still so at the beginning. I did the 10-week intensive that now dumps me into the rest of the community. So I feel like the group is just the beginning, and I'm excited that I don't have to leave and that I get to keep my friends.
I find out that there's more to this ADHD thing than I know, and it's impacting my life. I tried podcasts and I tried books and audiobooks, and none of those work. And I didn't even really want to try this. My wife suggested it, and she told me that just give it a shot. And let me tell you, knowing that all the shame I felt for all those years about being the way that I am, and then finding out that not just intellectually other people share them, but how universal it is and how easy it can be to forgive yourself and move forward. I accepted my ADHD probably in the first question and answer thing we filled out, but I didn't know what accepting my ADHD meant then. And I feel like I am far more happy that I have it in my life, and I would call it acceptance. And I really, really appreciate each and every one of you, amazing people.
I'm standing in solidarity because I too am here because my wife thought it was a good idea, and I'm glad she did it. I've known I've had ADD for a while, and I've done some reading and I've tried some stuff, and I felt like I had accomplished as much as I was going to accomplish. And taking this course, I found out that I was wrong and that I am still capable of growth. And the other thing I discovered was how much I missed having connection with other people who get it.
Whether you're brand new to the podcast and you're learning about these groups for the very first time, or you've been thinking about joining these groups for a long time, go to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our registration invitation list. The registration kickoff event for ADHD reWired's 22nd season of coaching and accountability groups is just 2 weeks away. Have you joined the list so you get your invitation? When you go to coachingrewired.com, click on the black button to add your name to our interest list for our fall coaching groups. I can't wait to meet you and see where these coaching groups will take you.
One of the things that I thought was super cool about getting included in the alumni community stuff was going to different things, study hall or the Tuesday planning sessions, and seeing people who had their group number in their name and they were group 9 or group 15. And it's like, people stay and they've been here for a long time and they still find it valuable. And when you're on group 30 and 75, I'm proud of my ARC 20 because people can look at my ARC 20 and know that this stuff is for real and people stick around.
And remember, after 10 weeks, you don't have to be on your own. Members stay connected and engaged in our coaching community with weekly sessions that I lead, adult study halls where you can work with others on Zoom, meditation classes, and a number of other peer-led interest groups. Our registration kickoff event is on September 3rd at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and registration is by invitation only. Get your invitation. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on the black button. That's coachingrewired.com. All right, we are back. I got caught up when my brain wandered there. Hopefully my phone won't ring again, but I didn't actually fix anything, but I didn't realize it was broken. So, all right, Blake. So you're talking about cortisol and caffeine. Here's a weird question for you. Do your armpits sweat a lot?
For those who can't see the camera, I'm raising my arms because trying to air and feel. I don't think so. I generally sweat profusely when there's any amount of heat. Okay. It's never really localized.
Okay. How's your exercise?
It's been really good recently over the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. What are you doing for it?
I'm starting to hit that, I'm past the 3 times a week, 30 minutes. I'm getting into the 5 times a week, 30 minutes.
What are you doing in those 30 minutes?
I am briskly walking. I'm trying to hit a heart rate goal, trying to keep my heart rate at between 126 and 132, something like that.
During that workout, is there any time where you're getting your heart rate up to 150 to 160?
I don't think so.
I would encourage you to try even for a minute or two. Just get it up to that point. It's like a rainbow explosion inside of your brain when you do that. It's sort of the birthplace of neurogenesis, where all these new neurons are created for new connections. When you do this thing that feels like the burn for a minute or two, it has a really powerful brain boosting effect.
Okay. Yeah, I took out sprinting to increase time, but there's some nice green parts of my walk when I would love to just playfully run.
I think you should skip, Blake.
Skip?
You should skip.
Are we going for forward distance or height?
go for a combination between the two. Natalie?
Okay.
So, everything you're talking about distinctly reminds me of myself a few years ago. It would take me hours to get out of bed. And I'd have tons of alarms, and I got a sunrise alarm clock, and I would have to get out of bed to turn the alarm off. And then I would still go back to bed and go back to sleep after standing up and walking to the alarm clock and turning it off. And, and it would just take me hours in the morning to wake up. And, my doctor was like, well, and you take these meds, you wake up enough to turn things off and to stand up and walk around, and then you go back to bed. Put your Adderall next to your bed, have an alarm go off 45-ish minutes before you want to get out of bed, take your meds, go back to sleep. And I did that, and it helped a lot. It didn't help all the time, but a lot of the time it really helped. So that's something to consider. I also I had a caffeine addiction in high school before I was diagnosed or anything, and literally would fall asleep in class every class unless I drink coffee, which is a total, like, I guess that's a total inattentive symptom of ADHD, where if you're like trying to focus on something, but it's a little too boring, you'll like focus in on it enough to fall asleep.
Thank you for describing like every college class I took. Very
literally, but I would fall asleep in like my college classes too. All of my classes, I fell asleep, somehow still got A's. I don't know. But like, it's a total thing that happens, and it's like an alertness level thing, right? And so if we can't get to a certain level of alertness for hours, it can just like go on where we're like weird zombies. And if it's like hours, then we get paranoid that we're not getting alert enough, and then we get too alert, then we trigger these like panic attacks, which also exhaust us and make us more tired, right? It's a terrible cycle.
And then right around the time when it's time to get ready for bed is when your brain turns on and it's ready to focus.
It's like, all right, we're good now. Yeah. No, it's just a thing. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And I wish I could tell you what exactly I did that's not happening to me anymore, but I don't know. I nothing has changed. I like my sleep is the same as it used to be, like, and it's not happening to me anymore. I don't even need to take my meds 45 minutes before I wake up. But like it's a thing, and I just wanted to relate to you, I guess. So
I've heard.
A big part of I mean, I used to have the same issue. Like I would literally drink a pot of coffee in the morning, like a literal pot, and I made my shit strong. Like it was like questionable if we would just call it mud. Like it was like, you know, for like 8 water cups, it was like 9 heaping scoopfuls of coffee. Yeah, and I would then fall asleep on the couch. And what it was what I was eating for breakfast. And what I was eating for breakfast, I thought it was healthy. I called it bird food because it was like this like super like not sweet, like semi gross, but also kind of good cereal. And I would pour kefir over it and cut up berries, right? Like wasn't Frosted Flakes, wasn't Lucky Charms. Like I let go of my Cookie Crisp, right? You know, when I first started learning about the role of carbohydrates, specifically on the ADHD brain, I'm like, well, let me try that, because this whole like can't get my shit up in the morning is really frustrating, right? So I started making these protein shakes, right? And it was absolutely more work than my bowl of cereal in the morning. And so for me, if it's something that's more effortful, the reward has to be big. And I started this 10 years ago, really shifting my focus to high protein, low carbohydrate in the morning. I actually made for about 7 years. I made like the same protein shake every single morning. Right? I finally got bored of it, so I have a couple things that I mix into it that I rotate now. Now I'm on a high protein oatmeal binge, but it made such a big difference. Like that, if you really may want to consider like save the carbs for nighttime.
Now that you say all of that, I used to eat a protein bar for breakfast, but that's all I would eat: a protein bar and an apple, and it was only 8 to 10 grams of protein. And that's what I would eat when I was driving into
like
work
40
in the
carbs,
morning.
probably.
And now I make sure to eat at least 20 of protein every morning. And that could totally be it. That could totally be why. And I just changed it like a while ago to try and do this diet, and it never correlated to me. That might be why I'm not groggy in the morning.
Right. Like I'm not like one of these people who are like, you have to change the diet. Like I think like all things experiment. And like, if you feel really good with the change, then like, I probably don't need to tell you to keep doing it. Right. Like you'll figure that out for yourself. Right. If you feel no change, it's a pain in the butt, like go back to what you were doing before. Right. Jessica?
Yeah. So I'm so glad that this conversation's gone down here because honestly, Blake, like when I was initially reading your Mastermind, I didn't even think about this. So this book, first of all, like
Which
Natalie, book? Eric, Blake, I'll mention the book. Don't worry. I had all of those same experiences. Carbs in the morning, massive caffeine addiction. I think at my worst, I was probably having 2 to 3 Red Bulls a day and like in the evening because I did shift work. So I had a lot of sleep issues and stuff like that to get over. So this book, the book being, it's called The Power of When. It's by Michael Bruce. He is a sleep doctor. This book is like the Bible for experimentation. You know, as Eric was saying, instead of like doing a bunch of things or changing your whole diet, he literally has this broken down by chronotype. So instead of just, you know, larks and night owls, he's got it broken down into 4 separate types. And he has suggested routines for each type, and it covers everything.
Just in case you don't know what chronotype is, it's just that if you have the tendency to be more of a night owl or a morning person, like, so people are biologically kind of wired. So this theory says for your chronotype.
Yes. Yeah. And this book, I mean, it literally changed my life. It doesn't just tell you about, you know, specific foods to eat. It tells you specifically when to eat. It tells you when to write a book, when to get surgery, like everything based on how your rhythms go. And so there's so many different things that you could just try one thing at a time. And it would be a good resource for anyone, especially people with ADHD.
Erica?
Hey, Blake, do you ever feel this way when you've gotten your full, you know, you've gotten 8 hours? Do you still feel not great in the morning? Do you still feel not great all day? Are you still kind of in that fog? It sounds like your 9:30 meeting sort of galvanizes you. There's probably an adrenaline rush, like I got to get ready for it. But I mean, do you ever have the full night's sleep and you're still feeling this way? Are you feeling this way every day is kind of what I'm asking.
To a degree, yeah. That's definitely why I wanted to mastermind it, is because there is that very ingrained process. My body expects food, coffee, meds, and like video games, like stimulation that is not at all like any expectation. And then I'm like alert and can actually hold a conversation.
How long do you play video games for in the morning?
That is a wonderful question that I've been talking with my therapist about. So, it used to be a lot. Let's see. I think March, it was 2.5 hours in the morning. A lot. And then, recently it's dropped down to about an hour.
Okay. Do you want me to use a gentle approach or do you want me to take the gloves off?
Oh, take the gloves off, throw them down. You were gentle last year. Let's do this.
Okay. So you are consuming instead of generating output. Okay. 1 to 2 hours of consuming that is not like, yes, you enjoy the games, right? Like you're a big gamer. It's part of like who you are. It's stimulating your brain. So you're maybe feeling that like, oh, this is good. It's waking me up because it's stimulating. It's also like eating Jolly Ranchers when you're hungry, right? Like if there's nothing else there, I guess it'll do, right? But like probably not the best choice, right? When I first read this, Blake, and because I know that you do this in the morning, and I think my first thought when I heard that you do this, I was like, really, Blake? Video games in the morning? Like every morning? Like, I get if you're doing like 5 or 10 minutes of like, what's this? What's that game my son plays now? Geometry something. It's you guys know what I'm talking about. Geometry Dash. Just pisses
Is that
me off.
one of those like platformer games on the Xbox, or just like
It's an iPad game, and it's like,
okay,
shit pisses me off. It's so hard. So yeah, I mean, it's like one of the things you said in your mastermind in your worksheet I actually liked is that you said you're not willing to cut out video games and TV without a plan. Okay, let's focus on that part. Be without a plan. Because video games...
That has some history. I got some solid, fun history for you.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So when I started on meds for ADHD, before I actually accepted that I had ADHD, yes, that was a thing. I realized, oh man, caffeine's like has a big effect. So one Lenten season, I went off caffeine for those full 40 days. And I ended up replacing my mornings with video games. And since then, I've had a pattern of video games in the morning. It also came at a time when I didn't have a smartphone. I was trying to not have a smartphone. I had a dumb phone. So video games, extra ingrained.
So why were you late to the smartphone party?
Oh man, that's a story in itself. I wasn't late to it. I am a technologist. I can't help but being... It
was intentional, wasn't it?
It was intentional.
Why?
It was very intentional.
Why?
Because I was trying to overcome a pornography addiction where the phone just like, it's just a ubiquitous gateway that I know how to get around like everything.
So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So to me, I'm wondering if you've replaced a pornography addiction with a video game addiction.
Yes, that's what I think is 100% true. And that's the history is like, I tried to cut back this last Lenten season, video games. I did not see the same results as I did with coffee. It was so hard. And it's kind of been that and work that have replaced my previous addictions, or at least supplemented.
I have some ideas. We got to take a really quick break. And when we come back, the gloves are off. We'll be right back. This podcast is brought to you by our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. We have a recent record number of patrons who have joined our cause to support these podcasts. 5 new patrons have joined us since last week, and I'm thrilled. Thank you so much. Welcome to Amar P at the $5 a month level, Tim B, Mimi S, and Aoife M at the $10 a month level, and Beth B at the $25 a month level. I just want you to know how much I appreciate your support. Consider giving by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon, or just click the Patreon button that is at the top of the page. If you are able to support this podcast, I sincerely thank you. For those of you who have been giving at the $25 a month level, where you can join us for our monthly coaching call for patrons, our next group coaching call is Tuesday, August 25th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Our group coaching calls for patrons who give at $25 a month or more are every 4th Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you are not able to support this podcast financially, but you do want to support this podcast, please consider leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast player like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. All of your support is appreciated. To become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com, click on that Patreon tab at the top of the page, or you can just go directly to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Patreon is Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. If you are new to this podcast, did you know that we have 2 other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network? Check out Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb every Monday. Will's last episode focused on energy management. This week, he is focusing on emotional energy. Join Will as he explores ways that you can work with your ADHD brain to do more of the things that you want to do. Subscribe to these short, mindful ways to hack your ADHD. It might be the best 15 minutes you spend all week. Go to hackingYourADHD.com for show notes and to subscribe. And every Friday, check out Adhd Essentials with Brendan Mahan. Adhd Essentials is kind of like this podcast, but with a focus on families, parents, and educators. And if you are a parent who has a child with ADHD, Brendan runs an 8-week group focused on parents, Mondays and Wednesdays from September 21st to November 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern, and he has opened up registration. You can learn more about his groups at adhdessentials.com/parent groups. But our podcasts, Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials, are both part of the ADHD reWired podcast network. Available to everyone, everywhere you consume podcasts. And don't forget, you can join me and the hosts of Hacking Your ADHD, Will Kerr, and the host of ADHD Essentials, Brendan Mahan, for an hour of live Q&A, September 8th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Listeners join us and ask all sorts of questions like, how do I prioritize? Or how can I tell the difference between ADHD and the lack of executive function and depression? Join us and ask a question. Go to adhdrewired.com/events or just click the events button at the top of our homepage and register for this and all other upcoming live Q&As. We do this every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Join us for an hour of live Q&A. Register for free at adhdrewired.com/events. That's adhdrewired.com/events. We hope to see you at our next live Q&A Tuesday, September 8th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there. All right, Blake, I think it's awesome that you have been increasing your exercise routine. This now needs to become your morning routine, right? And do it before your brain has a chance to convince you and rationalize why you don't want to do it this morning. Right? Because what exercise will do is the same thing you're like trying to sort of and are sort of getting with the video games is stimulation. Right? But exercise does it better. Right? And it lasts longer. And your brain's going to feel better. And I always think about the benefit of exercise for our brain, but our waistline benefits too.
You tricked me.
I did.
I didn't realize that you found my one thing that I had put somewhere else, and you're just like, it would be an even better one thing if you moved it over here. What?
So what do you think?
It hurts in a good way.
Yeah. Is it like the hurt when you're like, you tore your entire like room apart looking for your keys and then you discover that they were in your pocket the entire time? Like that kind of hurt? Or when you make the call, like, I can't find my phone anywhere, and you're on your phone, like telling somebody that.
Yeah, that sense of searching, and then just being like, oh, I'm not going to tell anybody about this.
Jessica?
Okay. So for the practical toolbox to apply this super amazing idea, where do you leave the house to exercise, or do you exercise in the house?
I leave the house.
Okay. So then if I may make a suggestion, right now, your brain has a loop. That loop is, I wake up, I eat food, I have coffee, I get meds, I play video games. All of this is happening on the couch before I go downstairs to the basement. So can you move your video game system away from your couch, put your running shoes or whatever you need on top of your couch the night before so that they are staring at you, and take whatever you can to make your old loop an obstacle for you to complete and make the new loop that you want to complete easy for you to complete?
Oh man, this is. I was just talking to my wife today. I was like, man, I think I want to move my desk upstairs because there's so much more natural light. Being in the basement sucks. If I switch the two, maybe not switch the two. That's a two-step thing. That's putting my work stuff there as well. But moving the game system downstairs away from the natural light.
Along with that, Blake, maybe even some signs or pictures or something, above the couch that says, what are you doing here? It's 6:30, get outside. Those kinds of, that external kind of, knock upside the head. I also think depending on if you can, meeting a friend, like at 6:30 or whatever time, a commitment or a trainer, or you go to a gym for a particular class, or you do a CrossFit, or, that sort of commitment that way too, would kind of get it going, in the morning. Is that anything you could do?
Yeah.
So
I want to include people. How do I do that?
So my occupational therapy brain is coming out, right? And I was going to say, stimulation and everything. So I was going to say the same thing about exercise in the morning. And then Eric got that punchline because he's Eric. But here's the other thing I know about you is you have that exercise video game.
Yes.
Zombie Run?
I do. No. Ring Fit.
Which one?
It's Ring Fit for the Nintendo Switch. It is built around what is essentially a Pilates ring.
Huh.
So I think it's probably way better for you to go outside and do your walks like you do in the morning, right? But it's you were talking about how you used to do the Switch Ring Fit game a lot, and then you weren't doing it as much. And if you're trying to incorporate friends in, like isn't it one of those games where you can have multiple friends play, and it's an exercise game?
Sorry about the beeping. That was my timer. I didn't look at it at all. I think the friends thing is actually happening naturally. My wife did Ring Fit this morning, and she looked at me and she's like, "I'm almost twice your level. You better catch up."
That's it. See, and that's why I'm like, there's so many different things you can do with video games. It doesn't have to be, what it is, for you right now. And I think, there's a lot of benefits to going outside. Like there's a sensory change, like with temperature, there's sunlight, there's actively moving forward, not staying sedentary in one space. Like there's a lot of very important and good things for doing walks in the morning, especially for ADHD brains, who are groggy, because it's a whole sensory experience that'll wake your body up, right? So I'm not saying replace to do the Ring Fit in the morning, rather than walk in the morning. But if you want to go for a 15-minute walk and then do Ring Fit for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning, that's probably going to reward you in a lot of ways, as long as it doesn't make it too easy for you to sit back down on the couch and play video.
That was my one concern. My second concern is, instead of doing it like splitting time, look at it as plan B. Like when it's raining, you can't get outside.
That's the other thing I was going to say too. If it's raining or if it's snowing in the winter, you can do the Ring Fit. Yeah.
When we were sort of in the thick of COVID, and I couldn't go to the gym and I couldn't play pickleball. I started basically playing pickleball in my office against the wall. It was not very fun, but I did it until I got a sweat going. There were times I just turn on some music and dance like a fool, right? The whole goal is just to get your heart rate up. And what I found for me is that, especially when because my routine changed and I was like, oh shit, I went 3 or 4 weeks without exercising, and it I was in a really bad spot during during that time. So I realized that like I need to have like not just a plan, but a plan B and a plan C. Like, because if I'm in the moment where I have to start the thing, and then the thing that I was like anticipating starting becomes not an option, like my brain kind of freezes. Right. So I wanted to know, like, all right, if this space is not available, I'm going to do this instead, and just have it predetermined, ready to go. And it's because we want to make especially if when we're talking about low levels of arousal, we're talking about low levels of activation, around kind of inattentive symptoms of ADHD. So we want to make things as basically easy as fuck, right? Like make them super easy to initiate. If that means you go to bed wearing your workout clothes, like do that. All right. All right. We are at about the 50-minute mark here. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here, Blake. How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good with how we've collectively identified probably one of the most significant components. Even though I wrote so much, I wrote about a lot of other things. There's definitely if my healthy baseline isn't solid, it just isn't going to matter how I try to organize myself. And I'm glad you guys were able to see, like, Blake, are you sure you're doing okay? You say you're getting enough sleep.
Yeah, and I really, really want to encourage you, if you could this week, make an appointment for a sleep study.
I've forgotten about that. I'm going to write that down.
It's super easy, right? Like sleep studies are easier than ever. They give you a machine. You take it home to your bed.
Oh, really?
Where,
you can do that now?
Yeah. My boyfriend had a sleep study done 6 months ago, and this is how we did it. We picked the machine up. They show you how to use your machine. You take it home. It's like a small little thing. You wear a thing on your finger and just want a little nasal cannula, and you place a little thing right here on your heart. Tiny thing with like a very long skinny string. And it works super, super well. And it beeps at you and wakes you up if it falls off. So
your wife's gonna love that.
But it works. It works really well. And then they give you all the things that you need to know. And and then you bring the machine in, and you have to bring it in the next day, or they'll charge you like over $1,000. That's part of it. Yeah. You like sign a thing being like, yes, I will return this machine to you tomorrow. So that's the only thing that's like, about it. But it's like so much better than having to go to a weird random room to sleep, so.
All right. Any other commitments, Blake, that you want to share here?
Let's see. I think other than the sleep study, there's two things that stand out, both trying to put my exercise into the beginning of my morning, as well as changing my environment to really mess with my natural habit of sitting down on the couch. One of those is, both of those are doable, and I think I can do them. The one that I also find useful is trying to establish a high protein morning and like a minor carb evening. That's more of like a nebulous one that I don't know how I would do right now. Maybe that's the next step after I've Power of When. I know you showed me that book and I immediately bought it on Amazon.
But have you read it yet? Or do you mean like you just now bought it on Amazon?
Yeah.
And you haven't read it yet?
No.
That joke did not land. Awesome. All right. Blake, Jessica, Erica, Natalie, thank you so much. We will be back sometime soon with another Mastermind.
Thank you.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.